Osaka Castle, 1598, rose like a living symbol of power and judgment beneath a heavy sky, its white walls reflecting the weight of tradition, honor, and expectation that pressed down on every warrior who entered its grounds. This was no ordinary gathering. This was the annual tournament held before the emperor himself, a sacred proving ground where reputations were forged or shattered in moments. Nearly 3,000 spectators packed the stands, their murmurs blending into a low thunder that filled the arena. Every eye was fixed on one young man as he stepped forward, shoulders straight, posture flawless, confidence worn like armor. Ryota was only 22, yet his name already carried weight. He was the pride of his dojo, the living proof that discipline, obedience, and relentless practice could shape a boy into a weapon. 17 consecutive victories glittered behind him, like jewels in a crown. Masters praised him, students admired him, and his family spoke his name with pride. This duel, everyone believed, would simply be another step toward greatness. Then they announced his opponent, a Ronin, a nameless wanderer from the mountains, with no formal training, no recognized lineage, no reputation worth mentioning. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some amused, some dismissive. This would be quick, they thought. A formality before the emperor. Ryota bowed, calm and composed, his training flowing through him like ritualized breath. The signal was given. The duel began. And in that instant, something inside Ryota broke. 8 seconds. That was all it took. His body did not move. His mind did not race or panic. It simply went empty. Not fear, not hesitation, but a terrifying absence where instinct and practice should have been. The Ronin stepped forward and struck him across the face with a wooden sword once, then twice, then a third time, before Ryota even raised his weapon. The sound echoed through the arena like a slap to the soul. The crowd fell silent, stunned, unable to reconcile what they were seeing with what they believed. Then came the laughter. Nervous at first, then cruel. Whispers spread like poison. The prodigy had frozen. The undefeated warrior had been humiliated by a nobody. That moment followed Ryota for 3 years, like a shadow he could not escape. Miyamoto Musashi once wrote that you can only fight the way you practice, but few ever talk about what that truly means beyond the battlefield. You can only live the way you practice. When discipline erodes, when purpose fractures, when identity becomes hollow, failure does not stay confined to skill or craft. It spreads into the core of who you are. Ryota did not lose because of injury or superior technique. He lost because he lost himself. And the journey back from that darkness, the path no one speaks of, is where the true story begins. The question was never whether he would fall. The real question was whether he would find his way back after everything he believed about himself collapsed. 3 days after the duel, Ryota sat alone in his family's estate, the silence heavier than any crowd. His sword rested before him, untouched. For the first time since childhood, he could not bring himself to lift it. 22 years of relentless training replayed in his mind alongside those 8 seconds of paralysis. 17 victories, endless dawn practices, his master's approval, his father's pride, his village's hope. All of it reduced to a single frozen moment. The bruises on his face faded quickly, but the wound inside him only deepened. He replayed the duel endlessly, searching for the moment where he should have moved, should have acted, should have been the warrior he believed himself to be. Instead, there was only emptiness. And in that emptiness, he confronted a terrifying realization. Without victory, without discipline, without the image of the flawless warrior, he had no idea who he was. For his entire life, Ryota's identity had been simple and rigid. He was the disciplined one, the dedicated one, the future of his family's name. He trained at dawn, practiced forms until his muscles screamed, meditated through the night, never drank, never indulged, never questioned the path laid before him. His self-worth was measured in precision and praise. His purpose was obedience to practice, and in 8 seconds, that entire structure revealed itself as fragile, perhaps even false. What kind of identity could shatter so completely under pressure? In the first week after his defeat, Ryota tried to return to training, clinging to routine like a lifeline. At the dojo, his hands trembled as he held the sword. His grip tightened uncontrollably, knuckles white, breath shallow. His master, Taita Sensei, watched him closely, concern etched into his calm expression. He told Ryota to loosen his grip, to relax, but the command felt impossible. Every movement felt dead, mechanical, disconnected. Taita suggested rest, but Ryota resisted. He did not know what he needed, because he did not know what was broken. Around him, students trained as usual. Some looked at him with pity. Others whispered behind their hands. The youngest students, who once watched him with awe, avoided his gaze entirely. After an hour, Taita sent him home, telling him he was present in body, but absent in spirit. Those words struck harder than any blade. That night, Ryota skipped meditation for the first time in 8 years. The absence felt like relief, as if he had removed armor that had grown unbearably heavy. Weeks turned into months. Ryota stopped going to the dojo altogether. What he told himself was a temporary break slowly became abandonment. He began drinking, not to celebrate, but to silence the voice in his head that screamed accusations of fraud and cowardice. His father confronted him, his disappointment sharp and unyielding. Words were exchanged that could not be taken back. Ryota lashed out, claiming his training had betrayed him. That discipline had been a lie. His father struck him once, then demanded he rebuild. Ryota could not answer, because he no longer believed there was anything left to rebuild. The warrior he thought he was, he insisted, had never truly existed. By the 4th month, Ryota had descended fully. His days blurred together in sleep and avoidance, his nights drowned in sake and regret. Money earned through generations of honorable service vanished on gambling and excess. The man who once lived by Bushido now violated every principle he had sworn to uphold. And worse than shame or guilt, he felt nothing at all. One night, staggering through Osaka's streets, he encountered former training partners. Their shock quickly turned to pity, and that pity cut deeper than mockery ever could. When they urged him to return to the dojo, he dismissed them, insisting there was nothing left to fix. He disappeared back into the darkness, convinced of his own emptiness. 6 months after the duel, Ryota reached bottom. A monk found him collapsed in an alley, weak, starving, barely conscious. The monk's eyes were sharp, free of judgment, and his words were direct. He told Ryota he was dying, not of hunger, but of absence. Ryota had removed himself from existence while still breathing. When the monk spoke of choice, of death or rebirth, something pierced the numbness that had wrapped around Ryota for months. The monk invited him to Koyasan Temple, offering no promises, only a path. Ryota lay there for hours after the monk left, staring at the sky. For the first time in months, a question stirred inside him. What if there was another way? 3 days later, unwashed and hungover, Ryota arrived at the temple. The monk, who called himself Bodhidharma, instructed him to sit. Silence stretched painfully. Ryota's mind rebelled. His body itched, and time seemed to slow to cruelty. When he finally spoke, demanding to know why he was there, Bodhidharma answered with unsettling clarity. Ryota had not lost himself, the monk said, because there had never been a fixed self to lose. The warrior identity Ryota clung to was a construct built on victories, expectations, and external approval. To be reborn, one must first truly die, and Ryota had been clinging to the corpse of who he used to be. The teaching was simple, but devastating. Identity does not exist as a static thing. It exists in action. You are not what you claim to be. You are what you practice. Ryota had not practiced presence or resilience. He had practiced winning, image, and performance. When those collapsed, so did he. True practice, Bodhidharma explained, was not about maintaining an image, but engaging fully with each moment. The path forward required building from nothing, abandoning outcomes, and letting go of who he believed himself to be. The next day, the real work began. Ryota was handed a wooden sword and told to practice his first form as if he had never held a blade before. The insult burned, but he complied. The moment his hand closed around the sword, memories surged and his hand shook violently. He dropped it. Bodhidharma told him this was progress. Fear was better than emptiness. The old Ryota could not continue, but the one being born had no past failures. With trembling hands, Ryota lifted the sword again, instructed to move not from memory or perfection, but from breath and presence. Each repetition was technically worse than the last, but more real. By the end, he was exhausted in ways he had never known. Weeks passed in this way. No advancement, no recognition, only repetition and presence. Ryota's ego screamed that he was above beginner work, but Bodhidharma taught him to observe that voice without obeying it. Slowly, something shifted. One morning, Ryota realized his hands no longer trembled. There was no fear, no performance anxiety, just movement. His form was imperfect, but alive. This was the foundation upon which everything else would be built. As months passed, Bodhidharma introduced deeper teachings, explaining the psychology behind Ryota's collapse. His identity had been conditional, dependent on success and approval. When those conditions vanished, so did his sense of self. Warriors of old understood what modern science would later confirm. The brain wires itself through repetition. Ryota had wired himself for winning, not for losing or adapting. When faced with failure, his system crashed. But neuroplasticity offered hope. The brain could rewire, always. New practices could create new pathways. This was not rebuilding the old self. It was creating an entirely new one. When a traveling samurai challenged the temple, Bodhidharma offered Ryota the choice to face him. The question was not whether he could win, but whether he could be present regardless of outcome. The duel ended without a clear victor, but Ryota's true victory was internal. He had remained present throughout. There was no freeze, no performance, only being. That presence was praised more highly than any win he had ever known. Years of disciplined, present practice followed. Ryota faced the shame of his past directly, recounting the tournament in painful detail until the wound lost its power over him. Deep meditation revealed a truth shared by warriors across time. Losing oneself is not the end. It is the beginning of something more real. When Ryota returned to Osaka 3 years later and faced the same Ronin who had humiliated him, the duel no longer defined him. Win or lose, he was there, fully present. That presence was mastery. Ryota understood at last what Musashi meant. You can only fight the way you practice means that how you live daily determines how you respond under pressure. Identity built on achievement is fragile. Identity built on daily presence is unbreakable. When a young, disgraced warrior came seeking help, Ryota recognized himself. He offered no promises of victory, only the path of practice. The circle continued. Student became teacher. Loss became rebirth. The warrior path revealed itself not as a quest for perfection, but as a commitment to presence, one moment at a time.